All right, I've been thinking about this for over a year now, and it's time to start trying to put this plan into action. And the question really is, can we go with shorter intervals between our harvests, meaning less time between produce that we consume from our garden? That's the goal. Now, I've been racking my brain about this for a while, and you can see the garden is planted, and actually, I believe tomorrow we're gonna add another garden bed in, not build another one, but plant another one. And so the question of can we shorten our time between harvests really is, it's a tough one. I mean, there's no other way to put it because there's so many options you can do and so many techniques we need to employ in order to get that goal met. Once you start looking at the garden this way and start trying to crack this code, then you start to really dig into your toolbox, and that's what we're doing. So what we need to focus on a few techniques here, and I'm working this out as we speak. So I don't know the absolute answer to this. I know the theoretical answer maybe, and we just have to put the plan into action and see. So what do we do? Well, first, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take it and say, hey, we get the majority of our harvest, and you get it in periods of the year, right? Certain months you'll get it. Well, we want to take that and extend that to where, it's a feast or famine situation in your garden, typically speaking. I mean, this garden right here, it will produce a lot, but it's like all at once, and then we have this great period where there's not a lot coming out. And so we want to change that. Now, the one thing that has helped is the greenhouse back here has definitely helped, but that's not really the answer. This greenhouse, it's not going to produce but so much, right? So you can't live out of this greenhouse. So we need to think, how does it work? What are we doing? Well, first thing we need to do is figure out harvest times. So harvest times are really important. And what I've noticed with this is a lot of times what happens is you start to get out of your comfort zone. We'll start planting and then we'll be like, oh, we really like this, we really like that. But if you have different goals, then we need to pick different things to plant. And so in the recent years, we've done that. For instance, our Brussels sprouts, they kind of filled in a little bit of a gap. We're still working out the gaps for that. So we need to continue that, but it has helped to give us a little bit more of a harvest in the winter time, really the end of winter. Well, once you plant all of these beds, so we've got our tomatoes going in here, they're going to go in here too, and then we're going to put squash in these beds. All of that's going to start giving us harvest somewhere between June into July and August and all that. So one thing that's helped are potatoes. So our potatoes have helped fill that gap because we'll get those at the end of May into early June, somewhere in there. So we've moved it forward a little bit more. Now we come up here and using multi-season planting, so spring into summer and stuff like that helps as well, because we will be getting a harvest in April of broccoli and cabbages. We'll also be getting a harvest of our greens, but then come May, what do you get, right? What do you have to harvest in May? And it's different for everybody, right? I'm in coastal North Carolina, which, by the way, my weather today, it was 76 degrees yesterday, and today it's 60, and the low tonight is 38. So, we're still getting a little bit chilly. I believe this is the last final push. But let's go back to it. In our area, so May is really a hard time. So what can come out of the ground in May that we have? And we really and truly, if we want to be harvesting something from spring, we have to be truly blessed with some cool weather, which typically doesn't happen. We can hang on to these cabbages or these lettuces maybe, possibly. I doubt it though. They are probably going to bolt sooner than later. They've actually been holding pretty tight. You can see we've been working through them. Another thing that could possibly give us some, our peas are a little bit late this year, and this one over here keeps falling. I'm going to have to fix that. But they will start producing probably in April into May, but they're going to kind of go pretty quick as we start to warm up. So something like peas will be a high producing plant. You pull them off and then you'll have that to go through. Well, the other aspect of it too that we've started doing the past couple of years, started adding in our rutabagas in the spring, and this has made a big difference because we'll harvest them in April, but we'll be eating these until June. The underlying thing about all of this is, look, I don't want to live off of peas. You know what I mean? Like, so we take this and we say, okay, well, what else are we going to get out of it? What else can we consume out of this? And, you know, if you get your peas, you get your rutabagas, you're starting to get some kind of diversity in your diet, some kind of meal, something like that. So using harvest times is really important. Is the garlic. We've planted garlic for many years, but it comes out about the same time as the potatoes. So, you know, you start to get that added in, and then we start doing other things. Now, the next aspect of this is going into succession planting, right? So succession planting is really important, and this works in multiple ways. This is like intensive planting, pulling it out, putting it in, pulling it out, putting it in. You know, you kind of rotate the beds in and out per season. So for instance, these beds right here are all going to be planted again. As soon as we harvest them, we're going to plant them. These will turn into tomatoes. Those two beds will turn into sweet potatoes, and then they'll all be planted again in the fall. So that's going to work its way through. But if we just focus on these two beds, what have we got going on here? This bed will be planted first. So we'll probably have, if I had to imagine, at least a 2-week jump start onto this bed. So what does that mean? Give us a lot of options. So this bed, in theory, should produce a little bit earlier, and this bed behind us will produce a little bit later, so that will extend our harvest. Now, if you don't have multiple garden beds, you can absolutely do it in one bed. Just put one plant in first and wait a little while and put another one in. So you can do stuff like that. So the succession planting part is this bed. And then I don't really know what the other one's called, maybe delayed planting or something like that. There's probably a term, let us know in the comments. It's slipping my mind. But, you know, so you can do that and work that to your advantage. Now, the caveat to that is it gets so hot here that, typically speaking, our tomatoes, for instance, will start to die down. And the reason why we bring up our tomatoes and they're so important is because they're a big part of what we eat. You know, we eat them fresh in certain ways. I don't really like them raw fresh, except for certain ways. I would never slice a tomato or eat it like an apple. But we use it in all of our sauces and stuff like that. So it's additions into meals and stuff. So it's a big part, and a plant will produce a lot of tomatoes. So that works out really good. Now, once you do that, you do your succession planting and all that, we've got to figure out how to get them in the ground more and more and more, right? Because again, what we're talking about is intensive planting. So when these tomatoes start to produce, we'll propagate some more. And then when these tomatoes start to produce, we'll propagate some more. And then we'll get them in the ground so that we can get a harvest again. Now, what that really is leading into is not just propagating, but it's absolutely all about starting seeds, staying on top of it, and having a rotation, a schedule. You schedule these things out and you keep it going. So, you know, in reality, you know, we'll be doing some direct sowing coming up, and then we'll take a little bit of a break, and then boom, we're right back into it for fall. And that's really important because fall comes and we want to get things in and we want to get them a head start and all that. And so that will keep us going because we'll go from spring to summer to fall, and you can see how we're starting to break this rotation. Now, the trick for me and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out how to get my cabbages to produce a head by, you know, December 21st, call it just the beginning of winter. How to start getting that harvest early, because typically what happens is they sit dormant, they come back, we harvest them in the spring, and then we just get like this mad flush. So in all reality, we don't have solid harvest all the way up until In the winter time, we will start to get some up until about Thanksgiving, and then we don't really get much more until February. We'll get a little bit here and there, and the greenhouse does help fill those gaps, but just not quite as much because we've been planting a little bit different in there, as you've seen. So that kind of will go in between. We got to figure that out, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But playing around with what you're planting and how they harvest and how they store, like those rutabagas, the rutabagas, the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, onions, garlic, I don't really count because it's not like we're eating. I know I eat garlic all the time. I know that, but you're not like making a meal out of garlic. You know, it's not like mashed potatoes. It's more like a flavor adding, stuff like that. So doing all of that really makes a big difference. All that jibber jabber, and I forgot carrots. Carrots hold over great. And they come out about June as well, so May into June. We'll see this year. I've been thinning them out row by row, so I need to go through and do the next one. Trying to get some bigger carrots this year, but that will help with all of that. So you can see we're trying to narrow the gaps in between everything, and so we can get more and more produce out at the correct amount of time. It just takes time. This isn't something that you just are born with the knowledge. You've got to see what grows, you've got to figure out what you like, and you've got to get it going. But I can tell you by looking at my garden now, we are harvesting food now, and we were harvesting in March. So we got March. Let me go around and point to the beds actually. March, April into May, more than likely. And then May into June for the rutabagas, June. And then, you know, really, if you think about when you're going to be consuming the carrots and potatoes, June, July into August. So then at that point, we should be starting to get our tomatoes and stuff like that. So this is a really easy time of year to kind of start planning and this process and going through it, because what happens next is it starts to get cool. And we need to figure all that out. And I know we're way ahead of the game, but this is how gardening is. You got to be ahead of the game. So if you've tried anything like this, I absolutely want to know, how are you employing? It's a really complicated, you know, it's a complicated subject, and there's a lot to it. And it's all about your timing, your tweaking, and also your fertilizing as well, and just getting those plants in the ground. So what produce have you, what varieties, what plants have you added in that will help narrow that gap, so you're getting more and more harvest out of your garden and less wait time, because that's what it's all about.